Welcome. My name is Maurice Pomerantz. I'm the Executive Director of the NYU Abu Dhabi Institute and a professor of classical Arabic literature here at NYU Abu Dhabi. The Institute is a center of academic research, artistic creation, and public outreach. We offer around 50 of these public lectures here in Abu Dhabi, another roughly 30 or so in New York, on a variety of topics throughout the semester. I am very pleased tonight to welcome you and talk about the Zayed Sustainability Prize. For me, this is one of the most meaningful of events that we host here at NYU Abu Dhabi. As I was saying earlier, it's remarkable to have an event where we actually talk very much about practicable solutions. Often our talks raise lots of questions, but we have few solutions. So it's really a great honor and pleasure to be here, and to be here with my colleague, who I'm going to invite on stage, Antonios Vouloudis, who's our Director of Stewardship and really sustainability here on campus. He makes sure that we attain the highest standards in what we do here at NYU Abu Dhabi. He's had a lifelong, I read, concern with environmental issues from a young age. He's worked for numerous governmental organizations here in Abu Dhabi. He's multiple master's degrees in engineering. And so he's really eminently qualified, both through his passion and training, to be leading this discussion. So with that, I leave the floor to you, Antonios, and I really look forward to an engaging discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. Can everybody hear me? Sorry, it's always a problem with me. I have to be closer to the microphone, especially coming on stage. You know, there's not always perks being tall, so always remember that. I'm not so good like Maurice going off script, so first of all, I want to thank the Institute for making this happen for us. It's been a great pleasure to work with our Institute and hosting so many different discussions and so many different topics, and we try, as an Office of Sustainability and Stewardship, so often, at least a couple of times a year, to go and touch base on some very interesting topics like the one that we will be talking about today. And what we'll try to do is to try and showcase how innovative solutions are successfully bridging economic growth, social equity, and environmental sustainability. Our bespoke speakers will explore how cutting-edge technology in environmental sustainability and water security empower vulnerable communities to build resilience and self-sufficiency. Our discussion will hopefully demonstrate practical solutions in water security, their role in driving climate adaptation, strengthening communities and fostering sustainable progress, inspiring students to think globally and act locally through sustainable projects. I want to also take a moment to thank the Zayed Sustainability Prize. We're doing this for the second year in a row, and we are very excited for this partnership. It's one of the panels that I enjoy the most, where we bring companies and executives that they are really helping communities where it's most needed. I'm truly looking forward to our discussion tonight. The Zayed Sustainability Prize, which is the UAE's pioneering global award in sustainability, and has positively impacted the lives of more than 400 million people over 17 years by extending energy access, fostering climate resilience, providing safe water, enhancing nutrition, and granting healthcare access. So one more time, I want to thank the Zayed Sustainability Prize, and I'm really excited for today's talk. I would like to ask our panelists to join me, and we can start with our introductions. Please, perhaps, yeah, okay. Maybe I'll stand here at the corner. please. Thank you. All right. It's a little bit interesting because you can hear me without holding a mic, and I'm used to doing that all the time, so I'm going to get used to that too. So we'll start with the introductions of our today's panelists. I'm very excited to have with me Rhett Butler, CEO of SkyJuice Foundation. Rhett is the founder and chairman of the SkyJuice Foundation Incorporated, a non-profit charity based in Australia. He's an active professional company director and an adjunct associate professor of mechanical engineering at the University of Sydney. SkyJuice provides sustainable water solutions to over 75 developing countries and emergency water supply solutions. Since 1996, over 9,500 SkyJuice units have been deployed globally. The foundation collaborates with NGOs and charities including Rotary, Disaster Aid, MSF, Oxfam, World Vision, and Islamic Relief to provide innovative water treatment solutions. Rhett holds postgraduate degrees in engineering, science, and business administration, has over 40 years of international experience in the water industry and membrane technology. He was made a member of the Order of Australia in 2012 and is affiliated with organizations like IWA, IDA, AWA, and the Institution of Engineers Australia. Welcome, Rhett, to today's discussion. Thank you for joining us. Jane Glavan is with us also today, the co-founder of Distant Imagery. Jane Glavan is a pioneer in climate tech and community empowerment. She leads Distant Imagery in creating affordable, self-engineered restoration tools and has spearheaded the planting of over 5.5 million mangroves. Impressive number. Jane is focused on empowering Global South communities to drive sustainable impact through innovative technologies. Thank you for joining us, Jane. And Walter Buydens, CEO of Turbulent. Did I pronounce this right?
Perfect.
Okay, because I'm usually terrible at that. Since June 2021, Walter has served as the CEO of Turbulent Hydro SA, a global innovator in micro hydro power. With a career spanning 4 decades and 4 continents, his expertise includes sustainability, environmental engineering, and renewable energy. He has led impactful roles with organizations such as the World Meteorological Organization, the Ford Foundation, and the IFC of the World Bank. He holds a PhD in civil and environmental engineering from Cornell University, an MSc in hydraulic engineering from IHE Delft, and an MSc in bioengineering from KU Leuven. He has been a guest professor at UNESCO in Delft for over 27 years and is committed to advancing sustainable development and scientific innovation. Thank you for joining us today, Walter.
Thank you.
All right, so I have a lot of questions, but I have limited time, so I have to be very practical with my time. So I'll start with Rhett. And I want to start a little bit about, speak a little bit about your journey. And if you can share with us some of, the story behind founding SkyJuice and what inspired you, if I might say, to focus on sustainable water solutions in the first place, which is a very interesting topic, and I believe can inspire a lot of the people that are with us today.
Well, thank you for the question, and welcome everyone tonight. I didn't think I'd end up as a social entrepreneur. I spent a lot of time in the water industry, building and designing large water treatment plants, desalination plants, and most of that was based on membrane technology. And I spent most of that time visiting a lot of countries, a lot of developing countries, and I used to find when I walked around at night or went on a run, I'd go to all the villages and towns and I thought to myself, when I retire one day, I'm going to change and design this technology and make it simple so it could be affordable. And then all of a sudden I realised that that day is never going to happen unless you make it happen. So one day I decided to retire and throw my job in and said, right, I'm going to start a charity, I'm going to do it. And I spent some time to redesign what was a very complicated, automated, computer-controlled process and make it run on gravity. And it took me about 3 months to come up with my first prototype. And like everything you develop, it's never perfect the first time. You've got to go through a number of iterations. And what I came up with is a very simple process where I took what was an established process and got it to work by just pouring water through the housing without any chemicals and without any power. And what I realised is this potentially could work and could be a very low-cost solution for people that need drinking water. And that was my objective, drinking water for people who can't afford it. And over the last 20 years, I've learnt a lot about how the non-profit sector works, how you go about commissioning, installing and bringing people on the journey. It certainly was very different to what I learned in my MBA at business school, right? It's a very, very difficult journey. And a lot of it is more about social interaction, social impacts. The technology and the technical problems are usually quite minor. Right? But along that journey, I've found that what we need to be is inclusive, and we really need to bring the stakeholders and the people involved in the communities along to design your solution. The fact that you've got something is quite unique, very different to, it's almost a paradigm shift of the way water is treated, particularly in the developing world, made a lot of people uneasy because you've got something that challenges the norm and they're not used to that. And you've got to be prepared not to push back, but to embrace them and explain it.
Very interesting. And speaking of which, and speaking about the paradigm shift that you just described and spoke about, can you touch base a little bit on the work that SkyJuice has done, especially in vulnerable communities, and how you have contributed to that water security issue more globally? And if you can share some stories there as well.
Sure. Yeah. So we sort of go back to basics and we say, well, who actually is responsible for water in a community, and who supplies it, and how do you do it? And you find many countries we work in that the government really does not provide a water supply solution outside the capital cities. So most of the communities are left to their own. And the very interesting fact is that most of the water is there, but it's untreatable. It's clogs, it's rivers, it's swamps, it's got animal feet, defecating in it. And most of the landscape is people will not even try to treat that water. They want to put a hole in the ground and take water from the ground, or they want to try and desalinate it. So we decided if we can take the dirtiest, roughest water and treat it straight away, there's an unlimited source. But you've got to be able to say, well, who's going to run it? Who's going to operate it? What's the life cycle cost? You can't just gift something to someone. You have to actually explain it. So we decided the best way was to embrace the people in the community that make the difference. And surprise, surprise, in every community, it's the women. It's the women that look after the family. It's the women that look after the sick children. It's the women and the small girls that go and walk 3 to 5 kilometres every day with 20 litres of water, bring it back for the family. The little girls who don't go to school because their job is to carry the water. The little boys go to school, but the little girls don't. So we decided we're going to break that nexus. And that's a very dangerous path to go on when you're challenging social norms. So we thought the best way to do that was to build a kiosk or to install it in a school, a clinic or a hospital where they can immediately see the benefits of clean, safe water, disease rates drop. But not only that, the women in the community now have a job where they can actually sell that water to the community. Water has value. People are happy to pay for water if you can demonstrate that it has outcomes. So as soon as we can do that, you bring people along. It's not a handout mentality. They're taking ownership of their destiny. They're not relying on the government or the mayor or somebody else to do it for them. They actually run it, and they decide in the community who gets free water. Elderly maybe get free water, sick people get free water, but there is a value exchange. There's an exchange of value in the whole train. So that takes time and thought. You can't just come up with that overnight. And surprisingly, many countries we work in, that ethos is the same. People are happy to pay for water if you can demonstrate and provide them some value.
Some very interesting stories you're sharing there, especially about empowering communities and about some of the specifics of, how do you work with those communities and how do you make sure that you work with them so that the technology can be deployed and create some kind of solution there for them. It's really fascinating. Jane, if I can come to you, and if we can speak a little bit about also, similarly to Rhett, if we can speak a little bit about your, how you went about founding or co-founding Distant Imagery, and how did your background shape its mission, and how did you start, in essence, working in this very interesting company and project.
Yeah, thank you. Our story actually starts with Sheikh Zayed. And so we're a homegrown UAE SME. Previously, I was working with government, with local government here, and for the last 23 years. And so this respect and understanding of Sheikh Zayed's mission around restoration and protection of mangroves really led my career, but also the work that we do with distant imagery. So really it stems from him, where the idea of blue carbon and the idea of restoration and why it's needed, but also this is the UAE, and it's an incredible place to try new things and try new innovation, and the energy of the UAE also, as everyone knows here, is really to try anything, and if it doesn't succeed, that's okay. You keep trying new ways to evolve and change. So we started distant imagery with the idea around cost efficiency as well, because it was at a later stage where there wasn't as much funding when I was in this government position as there was before. So we needed to think of new ways to do things more efficiently. And so husband, Corey, helicopter engineer, if you can build a helicopter from the ground up, you can certainly start building 360 cameras and underwater and you know, drones and kites and balloons and everything else. And so it's through this idea that really having impact at scale while doing cost efficiency really started our journey along with Sheikh Zayed's mission. From there, as a really important part, so we engineer everything here in the UAE, we test at scale, we do AI platforms, we build hydrogen fuel cell drones, hydrogen electric drones, and everything else. But what's really close to do large-scale monitoring, restoration, whatever you can think of that you would need from the sky. But then we saw at the same time that, you know, I don't know if you know today, but communities in the global south, they protect 80% of the world's biodiversity and forests, remaining forests. At the same time, communities also have the ability in the global south to really protect 30% of carbon, offset 30% of carbon emissions that's needed for global impact. So it's a huge amount, but these communities right now are often approached as a check mark, right? Like you hear community engagement, you hear integrity, you hear all these key buzzwords, but often the communities are not actually in charge of their mission. They have multiple different intermediaries that you would go through that also are making revenue, while the community at the very end is not having access to they have full work, but they're not having access to the full revenues that come from that. Often climate tech, so aerial solutions are really expensive, they're off the shelf, they're not fit for purpose because they're trying to address many things. And so what we did was we're thinking, okay, how do we do this paradigm shift? How do we really challenge the status quo that's needed, because communities need to play front and center to be able to help protect that 80% and that 30% of mitigation, but they're not empowered to do that currently. And so the way that we do that, and we figure it out, is working, co-building with them, making climate tech available to them. So you could see before, this sometimes means large-scale wood drones that are zip-tied together in 6 screws, and really allowing them to empowering them to actually do it themselves, build these things, solutions themselves, have true democratization of climate tech, have them have full access to those revenues that they derive, but share those modifications back. So then we can share those modifications with everybody else that we're working with, the other communities. At the same time, that makes, our tech, really, it's really cool. We get to test our solutions globally in multiple conditions, environments, conditions, cultural norms, whilst at the same time it makes it and so we get some of the best tech by doing so. At the same time, we're equally empowering these communities in the global south to do the same, to have that 100% access to revenue, to make change, to be able to look at illegal fishing and monitoring and poaching and you know, restoration at scale. So it's a real win-win solution, and it seems so simple, but this dignity and respect of communities in the global south often isn't seen. So that's the way we're trying to change.
Very fascinating. And while you were speaking, we also had the privilege to look at the video that you shared with us. Especially, it was really interesting to see also, you know, how you're using the drones to have the seedlings, and perhaps through that way, you know, plant some mangroves in areas that sometimes it's even hard to approach. So you've already have over 5.5 million mangroves planted as a company. I mean, this is fascinating to hear. And if you can share some more insights from this, especially knowing, for example, that the UAE has a commitment of 100 million mangroves by 2030, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And there was also a statistic that Her Excellency Mariam Al-Miheri, back in 2023, when she was still the Minister of Climate Change, she was sharing that, just to put into perspective, the UAE has 40 million mangroves. So when His Highness Mohammed bin Zayed went to her, she's like, I want us to go to 100 million.
Yeah.
So this means doubling, more than doubling, you know, the existing amount of, or number of mangroves we already have in the UAE. So if you can speak to us a little bit about this project, it's really fascinating. And, you know, here also at NYU Abu Dhabi, through our civic engagement team, we're trying also to do such volunteering or have our students go to such volunteering opportunities as well. It's really fascinating for us.
Yeah, it's really, so we take a different approach, because traditionally mangrove restoration is linear, every 2 meters. It doesn't amplify ecosystem services. We took a long time trying to figure, why do you plant in this way? And it apparently goes back to traditional terrestrial planting, where you would need to cultivate the land after. And so the whole way that we plant is called ecosystem-based restoration. And so you're trying to mimic nature as closely as possible. That means really understanding nature and letting her define the planting pattern so that you can amplify ecosystem services, because it's not a number, right? The 100 million mangroves, when the ministry is talking about it, they're not talking about a number, they're talking about a forest and what the services of those forests provide. So we work with ADNOC and ENGIE and Mubadala Energy, through also Environment Agency, through their ADMI program. And so we take this ecosystem-based approach in how, so that means our mangroves are closer together, they protect each other, they accumulate soil, they shade each other. You see benefits to the marine system, the water system, and the resilience of that water system. We use the drones. The way we've engineered the drones is that, you know, if a drone can only go 7 minutes away and come, it's pretty useless, right? You're trying to use drones to get to inaccessible areas, areas that are hard to work in, areas that are very sensitive. You don't want 100 people walking and stamping through the whole area. So the whole name of the game of engineering for us is how far out, how much can it hold, and so that it can plant the patterns and then come back, but not have so many seeds that, you know, the heavier the load, the bigger the drone and the less, you know. So we're trying to figure out ways to amplify the length and how far going out. But the way that we use plastic from the site and recycle that to the 3D filament, and the actual rigging shoots them out at about 90 to 100 kilometers an hour, so that the seeds actually get embedded into the soil. So we're actually planting. There's a term for restoration with drones that people who don't quite appreciate some of the effects of it, it's called spray and pray. This idea that seeds just land randomly. And no, this is the seeds are entering the soil, so they're actually getting planted. And so from there, then, you know, there's a lot of guidelines on monitoring and how you assess success rates and things like that. So yeah, so we monitor every 2 years, we replenish, so that, you know, when there is a commitment, there's a guarantee of data accuracy towards that commitment that, you know, our partners can justify and say, actually, this is how many we planted. And they're successfully growing after 5 years of, once they start growing, there's growing in the right place, so there's less than 2% die-off.
Fascinating. If you need any help, let me know. I can put my...
We have volunteers all the time, right? Like there's over 1,300 youth.
You know?
Yeah, please come.
Let's come and help,
us.
yeah?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm all in my office sending emails, so let me do something more meaningful than that, right?
Yeah.
Walter, let me come to you. And, you know, trying to inspire a little bit also the students in the audience and speaking a little bit about your experience working in 4 continents, you know, and all the work that you've been doing with so many different organizations. If you can share with us some of that journey and some of that pivotal moments, you know, up to your current role, which is, you know, being the CEO of Turbulent Hydro, and we will go into that in my next question. But if you can share with us some of your journey, hoping to inspire, and I'm sure we will do that. I'm already inspired anyways.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
And where shall I start? I mean, let's start off in 1984 when I was joining the World Meteorological Organization in Niamey, Niger. And to discover that one should never believe conventional wisdom. If you want to move forward, if you want to change society, by definition, you have to break through conventional wisdom and things which other people take for granted. And one example there was in 1984, I was a bit younger than today. I was like 24. And so I discovered that the rivers in the Sahel region, they were really drying out fast. And this was 84, before we all were using the word climate change. It was not invented yet. And I said, okay, we have here a serious problem at hand, because the river Niger, which was like 4,000 or is still 4,000 kilometers long, might run dry in the month of December, in the month of May. I saw that in December, and people said, okay, you're too young, this will not happen. And specifically, I don't know whether there are many French people here, I'm not shooting at them, but they told me, how do you even dare to say that? Because we've had data since 1901 and never the river has been running dry. And guess what? The river did run dry 5 days after. I mean, this was not a model on a computer. It was very simple on a calculator. And the prediction was that the river would run dry on May the 10th. It ran dry on May the 15th. So 5 months beforehand. So what I want to say is that, you don't have to believe what other people tell you. You have to believe your instincts, and you have to do whatever you feel you have to do. You have to be brave in this world. And the next thing was, I jumped now 10 years further. 1994, I was teaching at a university in Delft to people from a bit all over the world. And this was just after the Rio Convention, where people were waking up to the fact that, yes, climate is changing fast, we should do something about it, and we should preserve the environment. And then to discover that most of my students, which were from, as we call that now, the global south, but let's call that countries in a different speed of economic development, in none of those countries there was a Ministry of Environment. None. 1994. So luckily things have changed, and I could push my students, and some of them became ministers later, which was very good, very fine to hear. Yes, you guys have some personal responsibility. Do something about it when you go back to your country. You gather knowledge, but use that knowledge and use it for the better. So, well, those were two experiences at younger age. I also have experiences at later age, but
same here. But it's fascinating, and I'm sure that if we had more time, you could share 1,000, the other stories as well. That they're very inspiring, all three of you. But if you can also speak a little bit about the company that you are the CEO now, the Turbulent Hydro, and speak a little bit about the micro hydropower innovation, and how do you see this technology? And it's very interesting for me as well by taking a look at your website and just spending some time to understand how the technology works. If you can speak a little bit about it, and how do you see this technology transforming energy access for all these communities that truly need that?
Yes. Thank you for this question. Yesterday, at the opening of the Zayed Sustainability Prize, His Excellency Sultan Al Jaber indicated that at this moment, 1 billion people still don't have access to electricity. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we're going to solve that problem, but it's a bit amazing to know that the first households who had access to electricity were that happened in 1885. So we are 150 years later. I think it's a shame. It's a big shame. Sorry to get emotional, but
please.
I think it's a big shame that 1 billion people still have no access to electricity. And with Turbulent, what we hope to do, and what we are actually succeeding in a bit, is that when you have a small river, you only need like 1,500 liters per second. When you have a small drop, you don't need a cascade. We only need 1.5 meters of drop, that we can provide electricity for communities which are remote. And what we are currently doing in Kenya, what we are doing at this moment in Colombia, what we will be doing in the Philippines, that we can provide electricity to many households. And what does that mean? That means that people can study at night, kids can study at night. That also means that women can walk on the street at night, feel safe, that businesses can continue after 6 o'clock, so that whole communities can change. Sorry for...
Not at all, not at all. And, I also get very emotional since, becoming a father and having a 4-year-old daughter now. And, we keep talking about energy transition, we keep talking about all these different topics, yet 1 billion people don't even have access to power. Yet, what you do is very inspiring and super important. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for speaking about, that technology that you're deploying in so many different countries. I have the last question that pretty much is the same for all three of you. And I'll start with Rhett, but I don't know if you want to speak about that little thing as well.
I'll wait till questions come up, because we'll get bogged down. People what the hell is that thing?
No. I'm very interested if you have a moment to speak about what this is, because this looks very interesting. And then we can go, because we have a little bit of time. So if you want to talk to us about that, because also it intrigued me while saying it.
Well, I'd probably like to acknowledge what Walter's done, because what he's done is to really think and change the thought process. We need to look at different ways of delivering resource. In my case, it's about almost 1 billion people that don't have safe drinking water, and there's probably 2 billion people that don't have access to drinking water. And you have to change the paradigm. And biomimicry and nature is the way you do it. And Walter's design is very similar to that. He's got some... You look at the way Fibonacci and other people design things, and nature is a perfect design, designs lots of great things. So the membrane I use in my filter is basically the way the human body works and the way nature works. And if nature's solved the problem, why don't we use that? And interestingly enough, it uses no chemicals, it uses no power. But of course it clogs up pretty quickly if you do it. So what I've done is to use something that's almost mimicking nature, but trying to adapt it so that it can be used in long term. And that is the membrane there. It has 20,000 fibres. The pore size is 0.04 microns. So the water, the dirtiest, filthy water in nearly every country, I can put through my filter. It removes cholera, typhoid, every pathogen, disease and bacteria, but it doesn't remove salt. But salt's not the biggest issue everywhere. And people always say, wow, how are you going to scale this? Right? If you're going to scale it. And what I say is you start with the low-hanging fruit. So what we do, go village by village, and we install it in a school, a hospital or a clinic where someone can look after it, and the water has value. It's not gifted, it has value. And by having a decentralised approach, again, Walter's approach to the way you solve these problems, you have lots of decentralised little water plants servicing 1 to 2 or 3,000 people, where the cost is $3,000 to service 2,000 people for 10 years. So every person in that community gets 20 litres of clean water every day of the year for less than 50 cents a year. Now, when you explain that proposition, you get laughed at because they'll say, you can't do that, it's not possible. And that's when you have to sit down and re-educate people about the paradigm shift of approaching things with a decentralised approach versus large centralised water plants, which are never going to be built. So membranes and membrane technology has been around for a while. It's taken us as humans to really look at it and harness it. And of course, if you take it to the next step, membrane technology can be used for desalination as well, but it uses a lot of energy. As long as that energy is renewable, it's great. So I always get asked, what the hell do these things look like? But certainly that is just an offcut of one of the larger modules. But again, the plants that I manufacture in my little factory only weigh about 17 kilos. So they're very light. So we can transport them around the world, install them in schools, hospitals and clinics within a day. So as long as we can make them, we can install them. So the beauty of the Zayed Sustainability Prize is the funding we've received from that will allow us to fast track some reference plants and showcase to the world that this is possible and we can do it at scale.
Very interesting. So I'll ask my last question and then we'll pass it over to the audience because I'm sure there will be a lot of questions and I want to give enough time. And that's the one thing the Institute comes back to me and says, you should give more time to the audience, you should give more time to the audience. That's the one thing I'm always being asked for, so I'll do that. Last question for all of you, and feel free to jump in. So, you know, we had COP28 in Dubai, well, a year plus ago. Azerbaijan just finished a couple of months ago, and we're looking at COP30. And, you know, if you want to elaborate a little bit about your hopes for advancing water security and climate adaptation, Jane, on, you know, technology for community-driven solutions, building climate resilience, what are your hopes? Or Walter, if you want to elaborate then, what are your hopes, or what are your expectations fostering international collaboration on sustainable energy solutions? Because there are so many talks, so many discussions. I mean, you're working on the ground. There are so many discussions at that level up here. Where are we? What do we need to do? How fast we need to be doing this? And what are some of your thoughts?
I'll let Walter have first go.
Please. It's the same question, but all in your different fields. And
well, I've been living for 8 years in the Middle East, and way back in 2013, I think the COP was organized in Qatar. And then flash forward, I participated in the COP in Egypt and also here in Dubai. And what worries me is that I've seen very little progress, if I may say so. And most of it were words, 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 instead of work, 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 do, curse, something about it. So I hope that finally, and now, I mean, the setting in Belém, in the Amazon forest, should inspire people to say, okay, here, now we really have to get serious. But of course, it's not that only that week. Things we need to work on that right now, and make sure that we start to understand the sense of urgency. We see things happening all around us, floods, droughts, Los Angeles burning, and then some politicians make some weird remarks using politics instead of using their brains, and be honest about this. Yes, do something about it. We feel it. We've seen how people didn't even react to COVID at first, which was very close by. Climate change is close by, but it's also a little bit further. So people believe, well, it will not touch us, or some people believe it will not touch us. And this needs to change seriously. We have how many countries in this world? 185. That means we have 185 governments who need to be brave, because we cannot just work for us and think for us. That's very egoistic in terms of time. We need to act now so that next generations really benefit from it, and specifically universities like yours. I mean, people who come out here, we all have a moral duty to spread the news, to act on it, to study how we can change things. And we can change things. I mean, I've seen how I could do that. I've seen the people I worked with, my students who changed their personal life, who used their influence to make a difference. It's just a moral obligation.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, no, I absolutely feel with you as well. And I think Her Excellency Rizwan Al Mubarak said quite a few times yesterday as well, we need to act. It's not about talking anymore. Now is the time for action. And so I think something similar, it might be different kind of angles and areas of work. But I think listening to you both, what's clear is I think the idea that it doesn't have to be the $50,000 drone. It doesn't have to be these taking from nature and looking at it and trying to, because nature does know best. So when you're building and engineering solutions for your futures, look at what's most simple. And then it's about the communities, really. To have real impact, you have to have democratization of climate tech. It has to be, or green tech, or clean tech, or whatever the buzzword is of the moment. It has to be driven by the communities themselves. It can no longer be these hyper complex solutions where it's just about the ROI at the end of the day. It has to be built and operated by communities. The engineering that we do, co-building, you were saying the same, that co-building, the co-creation is essential. Otherwise, we don't have the impact. It's just a select small few that are trying to make, but we're at the scale now that everyone needs to have a plan, part of it, and action it. And that means the communities in the Global South have to actually be empowered to actually be able to do it themselves as well. And it's as clear as day that has to be done, and they have to have the revenues going back to them rather than being dispersed amongst many. And so that's my hope, is that's taken seriously, and there's more and more solutions out there similar to these gentlemen next to me that are all advocating for the same, multiple different targets, but when we all work together in this kind of idea, that it will actually have impact, I hope.
Would you like to add?
Ditto. I think, I'm sure many of the people in the audience have got the same passion and the same thoughts. From our perspective, I'm an engineer, so we always go back to basics. We look at total energy in, total energy out. We look at the net balance. And any equation you look at the whole cost, the capital cost and the operating cost. And in the water sector, we find that in many cases, you look across, people don't take into account the whole cost. And a big cost is energy, right? Energy, we know, UAA is a good example of how to source energy and to have diversive, renewable approach. If we're going to solve a lot of the problems like poverty, we have to take the energy equation and the whole life cycle equation into consideration. So whether it's housing, food, health, or water, you've got to look at that. So we're very proud that we have a genuinely sustainable solution to the people who really need it. And it's no good if we're going to provide them pumps and electricity and chemicals. It's only going to add to the burden. So all we can really do is knuckle down, double down, and tell the story. And many other people, if they come on that journey, it's the best way to go. The political problems are very hard to solve.
All right. So I don't know what is left to say, to be honest. All I would like to say is, first of all, is like, if you're not inspired, I don't know what else to say. I'm super inspired. You know, I'm very proud and very humbled that I have moderated today's panel. What I should have mentioned in the beginning, and I haven't, I want to say it now, is that all three panelists here and their respective companies have been nominated under the Zayed Sustainability Prize. And that's for a very good reason, as you very well saw. They've been doing amazing work on the field. They're helping people in need. And I want to thank again the Zayed Sustainability Prize, the Institute, for organizing this today, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this panel. I want to thank you all for joining me today. By far, it's the best panel I've ever moderated, so thank you so much. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for spending the time. Thank you all for joining. It has been also the most energetic audience I've been engaging with great and fantastic questions. So thank you all for coming tonight. Yeah, please keep an eye. The Institute has amazing programming coming up with so many different topics on sustainability, but not only. It's touching base on so many different topics. We're trying to partner as well with them and touch base on especially so many different sustainability-related topics. So thank you. We have reception outside, right? So we're going to be around for a little bit more, maybe grab a quick bite, right? Before we go, so if you have any follow-up questions, you can join us outside. So thank you once again. Thank you.